Go ahead. Thank you. Yeah, so thank you everyone for being here. So my name is Luis. I'm currently a PhD candidate in ecology and evolutionary biology in University of Toronto. And I have done some research in arid lands in Mexico. I'm from Mexico in the master's and in the bachelor's. And I'm also a founder of two enterprises that are very interesting, I think, for the Cactus Club. One of them is Verde. Okay, can you see my the arrow? Like the
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we do.
So I cultivate cacti in Mexico, and I also sell them in Mexico. And I'm also founder of Mex Adventure, which is an enterprise where I offer ecotouristic tours to different parts in Mexico. And I'm doing some tours to Mexican deserts because I love the desert. So, and well, the name of this presentation is called Adaptations of Old and New Generations of Cacti to Arid Lands, in which I'm going to talk how the plants, they can adapt and how they have evolved so that they can thrive and survive in the extreme conditions that the deserts have. So here is a general outline of the talk. So first I'm going to talk to you about the arid land and the weather and the environment that the deserts have. And then I'm going to focus in two different species and how they cope with different conditions in the desert. The first one is the columnar cactus, Cephalocereus columna-trijani, and how it has adaptations to deal with solar radiation. And the second one is another cactus that is called Mammillaria hernandezii, and how it has adaptations to so that seeds are more likely to survive with these variable rainfall events that happen in the desert. And then I'm going to give you like a brief description of one of the tours I'm doing in Mexican deserts. So first of all, well, I'm here like here in the desert in Mexico. And if you have gone to the desert, you can feel that there is a lot of solar radiation and it's very hot. So the deserts in general, they have very extreme weather conditions with high solar radiation. And they also have very high and low temperatures. So they have also extreme temperatures. So there are deserts that they can reach as much as 45 degrees of temperature. And also they can have below zero temperatures. And this can also heat the soil, and this can damage the root system of the plants. And also the deserts, they're characterized of having a very low and variable precipitation. And this can also, by consequence, they have a very low humidity in the air. So as you can see, plants, they have to deal with all of this range of very extreme weather conditions, but fortunately they have evolved so that they can have specific adaptations to deal with these conditions. So I named this talk Old and New Generations because I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to take as an example two different species. The first one is Cephalocereus columna-trijani, which is the columnar cactus. And I'm going to talk how they are adapting to the high solar radiation in the deserts, how the adults individuals adapt to these conditions. And the second one is Mammillaria hernandezii, which is this small little cactus, and how their seeds and how this plant is adapted so that they can disperse the seeds. So first of all, these two species, they're located in central Mexico. So here we have the Canada, the US, and then we have Mexico. Here's the summit of Mexico, and then Mexico City, it's right here. And then this biosphere reserve is located just in the south of Mexico. So this reserve is very important because it has a very high plant diversity, including cacti, agaves, and other succulent plants. And is the most southern desert that is located in the northern hemisphere. And Cephalocereus columna-trijani, the columnar cactus, is located in the northern part of the reserve, and the Mammillaria hernandezii is located in the southern part of the reserve. So for the first part, the title I put is The Wisdom of the Old Man, Cephalocereus columna-trijani, because this is the common name, the old man. cactus in Mexico. That's the way we call it. And well, I remember the first time I went to this reserve, I was very excited and very shocked about the amount of cacti in the landscape. And I saw a lot of columnar cacti. They were like this, the landscape was like this. But then when I started to go in the and hike in the landscape, I started to see there were some cactus that they were like tilted or they were bent in a specific direction. And the first one I saw, maybe I was thinking, okay, maybe something happened to it. Maybe there was a lot of wind and then the cactus just bent or it grew in a different way. But then when you start to see more of the landscape, you start to see a pattern and you start to see that most of the cacti, they bend to the specific direction. So then you start to think, okay, maybe this is not the coincidence. Maybe something is happening there that most of them, they're facing to a specific cardinal direction. So I started to look for, well, first I asked local people what were their thoughts, but I also wanted to see by myself what was going on. So I started to look for research on if there was research about talking about this tilting of the cactus. And I saw an article that talked about Cephalocereus columna-trijani. So this is the species. As you can see, it's bent, and it's called the old man in Mexico because of this tilting. It looks like it's an old guy that is with a hump. And also it has this part of the plant is called the pseudocephalium, which is one of the parts where the cactus produces their floral structure. So it produces flowers only in this part of the plant. And is always, this part of the plant, the pseudocephalium, is always facing also where the cactus is tilting. So what is interesting of this part of the plant, the pseudocephalium, is that it cannot make photosynthesis. So some researchers, they say, okay, why do they have developed this pseudocephalium if they're going to be able, well, if they have this pseudocephalium, then the plant is going to have less, is going to be able to make less photosynthesis, and then it's going to grow less. So they have this question in mind. So they did some research, some field work. And the first thing they wanted to see is to which cardinal direction were most of the individuals of this species facing. And they sampled a lot of individuals and they took their cardinal directions. And what they saw is that most of the plants, they were facing to the north or the northwest. So they were facing this part. There were no individuals that were facing to other cardinal directions. They were mainly facing to this cardinal direction. And now what they thought is that this tilting and this orientation of the pseudocephalium had an important implication in that had to be that had a relationship with the amount of solar radiation intercepted. So what they wanted to see is if they had evolved so that they intercept more light if they tilted to that direction. Because most of the individuals in the field, they are tilted to the north or the northwest, they had to use computer simulations. They constructed individuals with different tilting. So they had two different tiltings. The first one, it was erected cacti, and the second one, it was tilted cacti. And then they also simulated a cactus in the computer that had the pseudocephalium oriented to different cardinal directions, such as northwest or north, east facing, south facing, and west facing. So they did that for the two different cacti. They simulated in the computer. And then they simulated that the trajectory of the sun during the year so that they can estimate the amount of sunlight that the individuals received. They took as the baseline, the erected cactus without the pseudocephalium. And what they saw, it was very interesting. It was that the individuals that they simulated that had the pseudocephalium and they were tilted to the north, northwest, and north facing, which is where most of the individuals in the deserts are tilted, they had higher solar radiation intercept during all the years. So you can see they intercept 1.7% more radiation than an individual that is erected and without pseudocephalium, and also 4% more of solar radiation. So it's very interesting because this tilting and this position of the pseudocephalium makes that this plant intercepts more radiation than other individuals. If there were other individuals that they were tilted in other cardinal directions, they would intercept less solar radiation. So that's the first adaptive mechanism that this plant has to deal with solar radiation. And now the researchers, they wanted to break down this annual solar radiation and see how this cactus, it intercepts the solar radiation during each month of the year. So here we have a graph, and we have in this axis, we have the month, and then we have in this axis, we have the amount of solar radiation intercepted by a plant that is tilted to the north and northwest. And they saw this pattern. So during the first months of the year and the last months of the year, they found that individuals, they intercepted more solar radiations. And then during the summer, they intercepted less solar radiations. But what adaptive mechanism, why is this happening, or what advantages does this have? So if you focus in the temperature, here we have a graph of the temperature of the area, of the region, and here we have the months, and here we have the temperature. As I told you, I'm going to focus right now on the temperature and the solar radiation intercepted by the plant. So we can see two things. The first one is that when the cactus intercepts more solar radiation, the temperature in the region is lower. And we can see it on the first months of the year and also in the last months of the year. And then the pattern is reversed so for example, when the temperature is at its highest peak in the region, then the cactus, it intercepts less solar radiation. So this is very interesting because this tilting to the north and northwest of the cactus, it makes them to intercept more solar radiation in the coldest months of the year, and then less solar radiation when the temperature is lower. So they can regulate their temperature without moving, because for example, there are animals, reptiles, for example, that when they are cold, they move to the sun and then they get warm, but then they can move to the shade and they can cool down. But the plants, they can't do that. So this adaptation of facing to the north or northwest makes them able to regulate their temperature without moving. But this is not all. This is very interesting, but this is not all what the researchers saw. So they also wanted to see if there was a relationship about the cardinal direction in which the cactus tilted and the precipitation growth rate and flower production. So here we have a graph in which we have the months again in this axis, and there we have three different graphs. So these ones, the first two are the same ones I showed you before, but right now I'm going to focus in the rainfall, on the monthly rainfall. And the last one, it's more about growth rates of the plant, and then the flower production. So what they saw is that when the plant intercepts most of the solar radiation in these last months of the year, it matches also with the higher precipitation events here, and also it matches with higher growth rates. So then also tilting to the northwest has the advantage that the plant is going to intercept more solar radiation when there is more rainfall, and this is going to make this is going to increase the growth rates. And also, if we focus on the flower production, we can see that there is a peak here by March, and that's when in the area the temperature starts to increase, and then we can see that when the plant is producing flowers, then it intercepts less solar radiation. And this is very interesting because flowers are very fragile structures from the plant. So if they get direct solar radiation, they can get burned or they can dehydrate. And then if that happens, then the plant is not going to reproduce. So by tilting to the north and northwest, there is less solar interception when the temperature is higher, and this matches also when with the floral production. So that's another mechanism that this plant has developed so that to protect the flowers. And finally, this is also very interesting because here we have a cartoon about the position of the sun during different months of the year. And we have two cacti. The first one is the simulated erected cacti without the tilting. And the second one is how the individuals they are found in nature. They have this tilting to the northwest. So what we can see is that if individuals if they didn't have this tilting, the sun would hit the cactus in these parts. But because they have this tilting to the north and northwest, and they have this pseudocephalium where they develop all the reproductive structures, then the solar radiation is not hitting this part of the plant. So then in this way, this cactus is protecting the flowers from the solar radiation by tilting again to the north and the northwest. So in summary, this cactus, Cephalocereus columna-trijani, has a very specific and particular tilting orientation to the north and northwest. And this allows them to intercept more solar radiation during the year. Then also they can control their stem temperature, and they can also intercept more light when the growth season is higher. And also they can protect their reproductive structures by tilting to these directions. Now, I'm going to talk about right now about another plant in the region, which is Mammillaria hernandezii. And I call this this part of the talk, I called it Mammillaria hernandezii patiently waits for the best moment to disperse seeds.
Luis, I have a question.
Yes.
About the Cephalocereus. That tilting to northwest, is it because plants are growing like on the slopes, like southern face to north face slopes? Doesn't matter which side the slope faces, the tilting is still the same?
Yes, it's the same. So in the sampling design, what they did is they sampled individuals from different parts of the mountains. So I had from the north, south, east, west, and also in the valleys. And they found that still the tilting, it was the same.
Okay, thank you, Luis.
Yes.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. So, sorry. Okay. So I'm going to talk about how seeds are adapted to the sporadic rain that happens in the deserts. So first of all, rain is very important for cacti because we know that seeds, they need water so that they germinate, but still seedlings, they also need water to survive. So because they haven't developed the structures so that they can survive without water. And only adult individuals, they can survive without water during long periods of times. But the problem in the deserts is that there is a lot of variation in precipitation. So there might be years where it rains a lot, and then there might be years that it doesn't rain, or there might be also sporadic rains in which maybe it rains a lot for one day, and then it rains, it doesn't rain for maybe days, weeks, or months, and then it rains again. So they have to deal with this variable rainfall events, and they have to evolve different mechanisms to deal with this. So I'm going to focus in Mammillaria hernandezii. So this is a cartoon of this plant species. So here we have the flowers, and here we have the seeds with the fruits with the seeds. So first they produce their flowers by October, November, and then the fruits are ripened by May, and they disperse. No, they are ripened by March, and they disperse the seeds by May. So when they produce the fruits, they store them in these kind of cavities they have, and some of the seeds they're dispersed out of the plant in the rainy season, but some of them they are retained by the plant. So this is, for example, the seed production from the first year, and then the next year the seeds that are retained, some of them they again stay here in the plant, and some of them they are dispersed. And then that happens again and again. Some of them they're retained by the plant, but they are buried in the soil, and these seeds they're lost. So researchers they wanted to know when does the cactus expels or exposes the seeds, and when does it retains them. So they think an important factor, as I told you at the beginning, it's the water. So they think that when it rains a lot, then the cactus they expose the seeds, and when it doesn't rain, maybe they keep the seeds. So they did some experiments in the field. So what they did is they selected some cactus in the field, and they watered them during 5 continuous days with different amount of water. So they had 3 different treatments. So we water them daily during 5 days with 5 millimeters of water, 8 millimeters of water, and then 17 millimeters of water, so that they can simulate rainfall events in the region. And then each day they counted the number of seeds that they were exposed by the plant. And what they saw, it was a very interesting mechanism that this plant has to expose the seeds in when there is in the right moment. So here we have a graph in which in this axis we have the number of days that has passed since the experiment started, and then the number of seeds that were exposed in each of the days. So what we can see is that when they water the plant with 17 millimeters of water during each of the days, most of the seeds they were exposed in the first day. Then when they water them with 8 millimeters of water, most of the seeds they were exposed in the following 2 or 3 days. And then when they water them with 5 millimeters of water, most of the seeds they were exposed between the 4 or 5 days after the treatment started. So this is very interesting, because if you do the math, you can see that, for example, when there is a strong rainfall event, which is the 17 millimeters of water treatment, that rainfall event makes that let's say that the plant exposes the fruits, because it's more likely that the soil is going to be humid, and then the seeds are going to germinate, and the seedlings are going to survive. Now, when they water them with 8 millimeters of water, if we do the math, if we multiply 8 millimeters by 2 and 3, we see that there is 16 or 24 millimeters of water accumulating during those 2 and 3 days. So then they expel the fruits, the seeds, during the 2 or 3 days. And then if we do the same with the 5 millimeters treatment, we see that they expel them at the 4th or the 5th day. And if we do again the math, it's when the amount of water accumulated during these days is between 20 millimeters and 25 millimeters. So this is not a coincidence that the plants, when they kind of when there is a strong rainfall event, they only disperse their seeds when there is an amount of 20 millimeters of water accumulated in the soil, so that seeds can be able to germinate and seedlings can still survive in this environment. So this is what happens with the seeds that are expelled from the plant. But what happens with the seeds that they're stored in these cavities in the next year? So as we can see here, like, so some of the seeds in the deserts, they have to go through a specific cycles so that they can be able to germinate. So the most common one is seeds that are, for example, dispersed by animals. They have to be eaten by animals, and they have to go through all the stomach of the animals, and all the they have to be in contact with the acids, the gastric acids of the animals, so that the cover of the seeds, it gets thinner, and then the water can get in the seeds. But there is another interesting mechanism that I didn't know until I read this article, which is called priming of the seeds, in which seeds, they have to be hydrated and dehydrated during different cycles so that they can be able to germinate. And this can happen outside the plant. So when seeds are expelled or dispersed outside the plant in the soil, then they land in the soil, and then when it rains, they get hydrated, and then when it gets dry, they get dehydrated, and that happens all the time when it rains. But this is very interesting because researchers, they thought that maybe these seeds that stay here inside the Mammillaria hernandezii, they also are, they pass through these cycles, but within the plant. So they thought that maybe when it rains, the water they get, it gets inside the fruit, and then the seeds hydrates, but then when it gets dry, the seeds dehydrate. So they wanted to test this idea, and they did the germination experiments. So what they did is they collected seeds from plants in the field, which were inside these cavities, and they germinated them. Now, they also collected 1 year before, they collected seeds from these plants, and they buried them in the soil. And then in the next year, they went to the field, collected these seeds, and then they germinated them. And then they also extracted the seeds from the plant, and then they germinated them. So here we have 3 different treatments that they wanted to compare. The first one is the natural these cycles that happen inside the plant, natural cycles that happen outside the plant, and then also seeds that they didn't have any cycle, and they wanted to see if there were differences in germination rates. And what they saw is that seeds that were retained in the plant, they had the highest germination rate. So here we have in this graph the number of days since the germination experiment started, and here we have the amount of seeds that were germinated, the cumulative proportion of seeds. And we can see that this continuous black line has the highest germination rates, which matches with the seeds that were retained in the plant. And then the lowest germination rates were the ones in which the seeds were buried in the soil, or seeds had no treatment. So now these seeds also have need to pass through this mechanism of hydrating and dehydrating so that they can increase their germination rates. So yeah, so in some seeds, well, seeds are exposed with a high rainfall event, or when there is a continuous rainfall events, so that the probability that seeds have water in the soil so that can germinate, and that seedlings also have water in the soil increases. And the seeds that they stay in the plant during several years, they pass through hydration, dehydration cycles that allow them to increase their germination rates. Another important thing that I didn't mention, but is that So when seeds are dispersed and they land in the soil, they can stay in the soil. But one of the problems would be that they might be animals that they can eat the seeds. So then if they are exposed, they are more exposed to predators. So the researchers, they also think that when the seeds are retained in the plant, then these predation rates, they decrease because all of the seeds, they are protected by the plant, and then they are exposed whenever there is a high rainfall event. So this is most of the so this is the research and the adaptations they have. And I wanted to give you like a 2 minutes description about some of the tours I make that might be interesting for you. So the tours I make is again to the reserve in southern Mexico. And why I chose this place, because it has a very high cacti diversity and endemism. So endemism is when there are species that only live in a specific and a very narrow area in a country or in an area. So here we have a lot of cacti. We have 90 species of cacti, and most of them, they can only be found in this reserve. And here are some pictures. For example, Coryphantha retusa. Here we have individuals of Herocactus robustus. And we have also very big individuals. This is also a local species, Neuroxbaria macrocephala. And I also visited other parts with this very big group of individuals, Echinocactus plateacanthus, and we have columnar cacti also, Neuroxbaria mescalensis. And it's also very, it has a very high diversity of other succulent plants, such as Echeverias. And this is a very impressive plant that the local people showed us. This is an elephant foot, and it's a very big individual. So here I'm here with my sister. And it's very impressive to see them because I usually see these plants in, I don't know, in my office. So I have like small pots with this plant. But this is a very old and very big individual, and you can see them in that desert. And also, well, Mexico, it's also very well known because of its high diversity of agaves. And here we can also find 25 species of agaves. So, and some of them, they're local only. They can only be found there, such as agave stricta and these other agaves. And also, apart from the high plant diversity, the region is also very diverse in culture. So here we have local people that they know a lot about the local plants, and they know how to use them. They eat them. They use them for for medicine, and they also do some pre-Hispanic beverages, alcoholic beverages, such as one of them is called the pulque. So here we have this man that has a lot of has an agave plantation, and it's doing these alcoholic beverages. And also the region is very well known for its food and history. So here, so we know that Mexican food is a very delicious one. And the very interesting thing when I went the first time, it was that, so this is a dish I had, like a food I had, and it's made with local plants. So as I told you before, there are some plants that they are only found in that area, and they use the fruits and the flowers and the seeds and everything to make their local food. So this one is this kind of curry or sauce is made with the fruits of the columnar cactus I just talked about you, Cephalocereus columna-trijani, and it's a very delicious food. And also we have a lot of historical monuments. There are pyramids and churches and everything. So I'm offering these tours to the Cactus Society, and you can let me know if you're interested in them. And I'm also planning to do more tours. I have visited a lot of deserts in Mexico. So I went, for example, to this part of Mexico. It's called the Real de 14, in which I wanted to see the peyote, this plant, and also Ariocarpus plant. And I also want to do another tours. I'm planning them to visit these deserts more in central Mexico, where I saw this big individual of Astrophytum ornatum. And also there is a very nice place in which you can find thermal waters between the mountains and between the desert. You can see here like cactus, columnar cacti individuals. So yes, that's mainly all. And I'm very happy to answer any questions about the topic.
Luis, how often those tours start? I mean, monthly or once a year or seasonal or what?
Well, I'm going to start this tour on December. December, January, February. I'm doing these tours. I usually do them when I know people are on vacations, and I think most of the people are able to go to these tours by those months.
Okay. And like how it goes, I mean, I just organize the whole tour, like starting from like tickets, hotels and everything else, or you just take over when people come to Mexico?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear very well.
And are you just doing like kind of like the full cycle, like starting from like purchasing tickets, booking hotels, or you are doing just tours like when people come to Mexico?
Yes, so the tours, I include everything, like the accommodation, the food, and the tour with local guides, and I also go to the tours and I explain different, as I just explained some facts of the cacti. I also go with the people and explain them about the desert and the ecosystem.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, interesting. So anybody has any questions?
Yeah, I've got one. That was a really interesting talk. I really enjoyed that, Luis. I get a question regarding the Mammillaria seeds. The hydration, dehydration cycles that the seeds go through. Why does that make them germinate better than the other conditions that the seeds are exposed to?
I think it's like a cue that the seeds they receive. So because in the deserts we have very sporadic rains, so it can rain maybe one day and then it doesn't rain in a lot of weeks or months. What I think is that so the rainy season starts by May, but then there is a dry season by June, July, and then again the rainy season starts by August and September. So I would think that maybe the seeds they get hydrated in the first rainfall event, and then they get dehydrated during this small like dry season, and then they get again hydrated to the rain during the highest peak of the second rainy season. So I would think that it's like a way in which the seeds know, okay, this is the first rainy season, but if I germinate right now, then the seedlings, they're not going to have enough water to survive. So then we have to wait for the next rainy season. I would think that that's why they have this mechanism.
And I guess the second rainy season also is followed by the lowest temperatures. So maybe they're also avoiding the midsummer heat by waiting for the second rain cycle in September, October.
Maybe, yes. So the temperature is lower by those dates. I don't know if this, because some other strategies that these plants have is that they establish mainly beneath other plants so that they can have the shade.
Right.
But yes, maybe the temperature is decreasing by those months, and then they can grow with lower temperatures. That might be also
good.
Possible.
Thank you.
Luis, but how many of those cycles like usually supposed the seed to pass through after let's say just before they start germinating? Because I have like a few stories about germinating sclera cactuses. And I know that some of them don't germinate till whatever 2, 3, 4 years from the harvesting time. And like regardless whatever I did, I put them in the freezer, put them under whatever. Like I was trying to hydrate them, that put them in the freezer again. Doesn't matter. they were just waiting for a few years and then they start germinating. And I'm not sure if it's related to the same kind of like behavior or conditions where the plants are growing, because those clear cactuses are mostly from Southwest US. So, or it might be something different because I'm not sure.
So in the article, they also did an experiment of, so they took seeds and they did 1, 2, 3, 4, and I think 5 cycles, and they tested if the germination rates increased with the germination cycles, and they saw that when they had more cycles, the germination rates, they were higher, but mainly maybe but this is for this specific species. So maybe the species you're talking about, so seeds also, they have a mechanism that it's called dormancy, seed dormancy, in which, well, and the seeds can also stay in the soil during a lot of years. And what I have also read is that there's some cacti that the germination rates, they're higher only when, for example, you store them for 4 years and then you germinate them. So maybe that's what is happening with that species that you're mentioning.
Because I was fighting with very similar species of Mammillaria, which is Mammillaria teresa or teresii, whatever. And I have seeds from my own plants, and I don't have luck with germinating them. I have just occasionally 1 or 2 seeds germinated. And I know that Dalibor was experimenting with it, and he said that usually he has like more success when he put it into kind of an acid, like pretty strong acid, for like a few minutes, and then the germination rate was just spiking just immediately. Honestly, I did that experiment as well. I was trying to use the acid. Doesn't make any difference to me. And basically, as I said, like for a few years, I'm trying to get them germinated, and every year I'm collecting more plants from my Mammillaria teresa, and I don't have too much luck with germinating it. And I'm not sure if I have to do those like cycles, as you said, maybe hydration, dehydration, or something like that.
I think that Mammillarias, they usually do that. They store the seeds, because there is another article about Mammillaria pectinifera. I think it does the same thing.
Yes,
and Mammillaria teresae, I would think that it looks like it also like keeps the seeds.
Yes,
so
they
maybe,
are from the same group.
So maybe if you try that, maybe it can
Pectinifera,
work.
I don't see any issues because I have seeds of my pectiniferas, of my Mammillaria pectinifera, and they're germinating okay. I mean, like normal seeds. Also, I have to just extract them from those cavities, as you said. I use just like a needle or something just to extract them from the body. Then I just dry them and I sow them, and they're germinated. But Teresa, whatever I did, 0. I was trying different kind of clones, which I was obtaining from different cactus growers, and I think maybe it's like something like genetic issue, but no.
I think it's a complex thing. Like I also have read that there's some seeds that they need a fungi so that they can germinate, or they have to pass through different treatments. So I think that the most important thing first is to know maybe the region in which the plant grows, and then study a little bit, like think, okay, there are like I don't know, frosting events, or it doesn't rain, or what's going on with the environment, so that you can start by trying some experiments. But I think it's a very complex thing.
From your understanding, those hydration, dehydration, for example, if I have like a pack of seeds, I can put them into the water for how long, and then I have to dry them for how long. Do you have any like estimation of those kind of graphs of or periods of hydration, dehydration? How long should I keep them like dehydrated before I would hydrate them again? It would be like 2 weeks or 2 days or maybe half a year. I'm not sure which one works better. Because I'd like to prepare some seeds for my like fall like sowing uh, season, and I'm just not sure if it's too late to start hydrating, dehydrating like Teresa seeds now. So if they have to stay dry for like a month or 6 months and then be hydrated again, then probably they will be ready in a few years only.
Yeah, I will have to check that. But I would think what they did here is only they hydrated and dehydrated in a couple
But
of
for
days.
how long? For a couple of days, okay.
I can check that data.
Yeah, if you'll see any information which will kind of make sense about those like times and number of days or months or weeks, whatever. So I can do something with my seeds as well, just to see if it actually works for that particular species, because it might be different. As you mentioned, one species might need hydration, dehydration, and other species might need just to be digested through the animal or birds, whatever, stomach. Who knows?
Well, it's very complex because I have also read about that some of them they have to be buried in the soil because when there is the solar radiation and it goes through the soil, only certain wavelengths they pass, and then those wavelengths that pass, they activate certain proteins. So when I started to read more about this, I was like, wow, it's a very complex thing. Like, and how do you know where to start? Like, there are a lot of things that can increase the germination rates, but you don't know where to start, and
yeah, interesting.
It's very complex.
It's a science, yeah. It's
yes.
It would seem, Vlad, that the more you can mimic what they would be exposed to in a natural environment, perhaps the better germination rate you would get. And if you think about rain in Mexico, it could be from really wet one day and then a few days of really warm and then rain again. So maybe it's that gives you some insight if you look at see what the rain patterns are for the area that those Mammillaria come from.
Yes, maybe. But see, for example, like my sclera cactus story, it definitely supposed to be like frozen and then warmed up and frozen again a couple of times. But I did it. Didn't make any difference. But then I almost just forgot about those seeds, and 3 or 4 years later, I sowed them again, and I have just almost 100% of germination.
Yes, I also read about about some species of Turbinicarpus. They only they have their highest germination rates after 4 years. So
yeah, could be, yeah. But it's very specific. It's very interesting because I collected seeds from from 2 localities which are very close to each other. They all were like last year's seeds. Okay, so basically they're the same age and the same species of sclera. And when I started sowing them, the ones which you collected like from locality A were germinated just immediately. But other ones which I collected from locality B, I had to wait 3 or 4 years. It's weird. It's the same species, very close localities, and so it's it's a lot of stuff to research, Luis. And
yes, yes, I'm very interested in that because, as you said, like when I started to read more about the how to enhance germination rates, you start to see that you can do a lot of things, like just like this priming and then like cold and hot, and but then I was thinking
everything,
there must be like you cannot start with the seeds and do like any treatment. I'm interested in, I would like to maybe do some research on how, like seeing if there is a pattern, like for example, species that they leave this, they have to they germinate this way, or maybe species with this within this genus they do this. There must be a pattern, but I don't know. It must be very complex.
Well, so it will be your topic for the next research. When you finish this PhD,
so, yes.
you'll start something else.
Yeah. Yes, it will be very interesting.
Luis, are these article open access? Is there a way for us to download these articles ourselves? Like, you have the citations available somewhere that we can access?
I can send you the articles. Yes. So
Could you
if you
please,
don't mind, that would
yeah.
be great. If you could just send it to our treasurer, which is Vlad, and
Mhm.
then I don't know if it's okay if we just share these articles among the members of the club.
No, I don't believe you cannot do it, but if somebody asks, we can somehow kind of like show them at least part of that research article.
Yes, I have access to the articles because I'm studying at the university.
No, but usually they're copyrighted. See,
they have to. The university has to pay for having access.
No, but even if you have access, you cannot redistribute it.
Yeah,
You can use it for yourself, but if you try to redistribute it, then you're violating copyrights.
well, I guess
This is what
the whole
happens.
reference might be enough. If
Yes.
we can just get like the citations and like full citation of these two articles.
Yes, could
Yes.
be.
Please,
Yeah.
yes, please.
Yeah. Those who has access to those resources, whether paid or not, can then access them yourselves.
No, I was trying to contact few people like about publishing their pictures, for example. Usually they don't even like reply because they said, okay, you have to have a written permission from the author to publish his or her picture. I emailed them and nothing. Okay, so thank you so much, Luis.
I've got another question, if I may.
Yeah,
yeah, sure.
Louis, I was wondering, do you happen to know what the pH is of the rainfall in that part of Mexico?
No, I don't know about that, but I would think that the pH of the soil in that area,
No, of the rainfall, not the soil, but of the rainfall.
Well, I don't know it, but I don't think I think that the pH of the soil would be more important than the pH of the rainfall. But I'm not sure about that.
no, there are not like acid rains for sure, because usually it's around like industrial areas, something like that, but not in the desert. It should be something like.
It's not rain kind of acidic in a way, because since they absorb carbon dioxide on its way down.
Yeah,
but carbon dioxide.
All rainfall is acidic for sure. I just curious to know what the pH is because of its distance from the ocean, and so the duration of clouds will affect the pH of the rain. So I was kind of curious about that. Any idea, Lois, where I could maybe find that out?
Well, I don't know, but I just look.
I thought maybe somebody that you're associated with in hydrology might know that.
I can. Okay, I'm going to check that. I don't know very well, but I'm going to check with other people if they know somebody.
Hey, thanks very much. I appreciate that.
But what about the soil, Luis? You mentioned that soil is what? Is it like limestone, or is it just granite?
It's well, I don't know if that's the name in English. It's calcareous soil.
Calcareous.
Yes. So it's like white.
Okay, so it's kind of like with high pH, yes.
Yes, that's what I was saying. Like maybe it's more about the soil, but yes.
Because
Also
I know
the cacti, they some of them they grow in very specific soils.
Yeah, because I was looking at the like astrophytums localities, and most of them are growing in limestones or dolomite rocks, which basically has a lot of calcium in it, and usually pH is pretty high in those soils. That's why when you water your astrophytums in the greenhouse, I'm not using acid just to lower the pH. I'm using just regular water. Where for the other cacti, usually I'm trying to lower the pH when I'm watering them. So it's it's so many factors. Jesus, you have to just know.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Very complex.
Yeah. Oh,